gauchos.
So, how does it feel to be back at UCSB?
It feels weird. It feels very weird. Yeah, because I graduated in 2007, and so this building didn't exist. So I'm like, where am I? Cool though, looks good. Yeah, just thinking about all the times that I drank too close to the cliff or on DP and all the things, and a lot of memories. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you about that. Can you tell us a little more beyond those memories, some of the things and memories you remember from being here at UC Santa Barbara back in the day?
Yeah, it's like one of the happiest times of my life. I started off as a biz econ major because I didn't know what I was doing and I hated it, and started failing immediately, and I did a year abroad because I was figuring it out, took a film class and fell in love with it. And so, yeah, by my junior year, I had switched to film and media studies, got a job as a film projectionist in Buchanan. And so I just, devoured everything, because any class I wasn't taking, I was just watching everything that they were showing. So
we were talking before, you said that there might be a slight influence of some cultural theory, film theory classes on some of what you shot here. Do you see
absolutely.
some of the work that you did here showing up on screen in all your other films?
Yeah. I also feel like I don't think I approach a project without running it through what is the implicit meaning. What am I saying? Because it's a privilege to be able to talk to millions of people. And starting for where everyone's starting here, I didn't even know I could be a director while I was at film school here. It's like theory. It was all theory when I was here, and it kind of came into shape after I graduated and started making things. So I always have a base. My base level is to start with, well, what am I saying? And how is it going to affect people? And if I have the opportunity to talk to millions of people, I take it very serious.
Speaking of one of those themes, a lot of your work has some impact and thoughts around masculinity, sometimes the toxic version thereof. I'm curious if that's what drew you to him, and where you sort of feel like this film plays into that.
You're never really like, I wouldn't even worry about describing yourself in your own work. I can only have this vocabulary because now I'm farther into my life and career, and people have also helped me describe it. But apparently I do explore themes of masculinity, identity. And I think, I don't know if anyone saw my first feature, Kicks, but that was essentially my coming of age story when I got jumped over a pair of shoes. And, my uncle turned grandma's house to a trap house, and a little love letter to the Bay Area. But that is, in essence, exploring, it's the absurdity of making masculinity is synonymous with violence and rites of passage, specifically in American culture. And if you look at him, I think it is the maturation of that exploration, where Kicks is a bit open-ended and kind of melancholic, and this is obviously a very definitive end. And I think I've developed a more definitive point of view on when violence is necessary, and if it is, and why. And so all of the things you're studying right now, at least in my experience, never left, and they inform pretty much every decision I've made in my film career.
And this started off as a script called Goat, and it was a huge hit on the blacklist, and Monkey Paw bought it. At what point, what was the journey from that moment, and then you came on as a writer-director? Can you kind of go through the development of the script once it got into your hands?
Yeah. So I was minding my own business. I was actually burnt out from television, and I actually took a year. Was like, I need to take time off. It was like mental health, terrible, everything, and all those themes also come up in the movie. And what was the question?
The development
Yeah.
from the point when Monkey Paw bought it.
So they acquired it, and there had already been some tweaks based off Jordan's notes, and the studio wanted something bigger. The Blacklist script was very, very small, contained, and and it's Universal, so they had some notes already coming in. So it was already in a place where they just wanted a writer-director to steer it. They just wanted a really strong point of view and to bring it somewhere because it needed shaping and a voice. And I actually met Jordan back when he won the Academy Award and just started Monkey Paw because Kicks had come out at the same time. So we had actually met then, and I'd been on their radar for a while. So I came in with I didn't hold anything back. I came in with like the most absurd point of view, and I was shocked. I was like, "You're just gonna let me do this, all right?" But I basically put my stamp on every scene, like rewrote every scene. It was just more of like a polish, and then once they saw what I was doing, I think that there was then another round of like what else? And the reality is this movie was going to be made like come hell or high water. Like they were going to shoot it, so there was a ticking clock, and a lot of the rewrites I started doing were in service of production, actor schedules, production schedule, weather patterns. Like it was a big puzzle piece that was moving very quickly. So, but that's the thing. Story is story, and everything serves it. So there's a million ways to tell the same story, and I think all my experience in TV also this probably doesn't exist unless I had that muscle. So
there's a synchronicity in the design, like the cinematography, the art direction, production design. It's all kind of gorgeous and architected. Can you talk about just the team? Yeah, what's true? I mean, can you talk about the team that kind of put together the whole look of the film in the settings, the art direction, everything?
Yeah, so everyone always has these questions too about process and how you pitch and but so it could be different, but for the way I work with department heads is even when I'm meeting Monkey Paw for the first time, I have a lookbook, like a deck that's probably 100 pages maybe, and like a sizzle reel. So I'll like go cut clips and cut together like a trailer, like a mock trailer for what my vision is. And I have a pretty, you don't have to have that whatever that is, the aesthetic mindedness to be a director, a working director. You don't, but it's something I really love. And so I have conversations with each department head, cinematographer, production designer, even the editor and costume designer, and basically everyone is telling a story within their department, and I basically give the outline of, okay, this is going to be, here's a graph, like I drew a graph that was, here's where their mental state is, and both Cameron Cade and Isaiah White, the line went like this. It's going to be a descent to madness. And so that every department, wherever we're at in the story, in the page, you go, okay, we're around here. And even who has the power and who's in a power position, they crossed as the week went on. So the color had a story, the hair had a story, the wardrobe had a story. We start off in cottons in the first act because it's warm and inviting and homey. And once he gets to the compound, we transition into synthetics and plastics, and it gets tighter and more claustrophobic. And that could apply to any apartment. So even the colors, even the lighting, we start in a more Nike ad, docu-style, more natural light, and we transition to more harsh fluorescence. And so it's all working towards like I purposely, wrote that house to be underground because we wanted top light. Well, I wanted top light to justify the divinity because chapels are lit like how we lit the house. So everything was by design but it, again, back to film theory, my conversations with the department heads start from a place of art history and cultural theory and what am I actually saying with the mascots? What are we actually, and then I let, hopefully the department heads inspired enough to do something that I could have never dreamt.
Well, you started going down a road that I was going to ask you about, which is thinking about cults and the occult, pagan symbols, and there's like a architected Last Supper image, and then there's this kind of idea about the sort of God, family, and football, not necessarily in that order, of course. And the question just is, what all of this was something that was in the script, or this was also what you were doing in the art direction, and with how did that all come together?
Yeah, what happened is pretty weird conversations happen at Monkey Paw, we'll say. But where I came in development, there was no lore, there was no anchor, none of the cult stuff was there. And so I started deep diving into Zoroastrianism and the Bohemian Club, which is like an actual club that a lot of our presidents have been in, where they make up their own rituals. It's only 100 years old, and a lot of the aesthetic is just inspired by it, ripped from the headlines. Like go on Google and look it up. It's batshit crazy, but it's just life. It's like pulling from life and alchemy. But there is I guess, collage of sorts, because it's bombastic and maximalist and absurd and sometimes camp. So the underlying thing being football allowed for, I guess, more of a tapestry of like, I know an audience has this economic narrative. I know everyone is going to lean into this because Tom Brady once said this, and everyone knows that billionaires take blood from their kids or whatever, young dudes, and there's a lot to pull from, and I would have rather, I guess, let audiences discover it on Reddit than because everything else is so in your face, and that letting the symbolism and art influence be discovered by whoever wanted to look.
The other thing that's really striking is the casting. I mean, Marlon Wayans in a role we haven't really seen, just sort of demolishes the scenery. Julia Fox, we've talked about, I thought was a really inspired casting, and Tyreek, sort of everyone's cutting these kind of incredible figures. What was the casting process like, and what did you have to fight for anyone?
Yeah, actually, everyone. I think. Look, I was the biggest risk to the studio too, so we all had our underdog story going into this. But Marlon, obviously, had not been known for a role like this with this kind of range, as for the parody. But I know him from Requiem for a Dream, and I knew he had it in him, and so that was part of what I wanted. Was I didn't want to go with someone young and then pull the emotion from them. I would have rather gone for someone like Marlon, who's a goat himself and his family. He has stories of like Richard Pryor coming over when he's like 5 and like messing with them. That's not normal. Like good or bad, he has insane experience around fame, celebrity, and greatness. Like that's all he's known. So I knew we were gonna pull that from him, and then, I mean, shout out to him for putting his body through what he went through to get into that kind of shape. And at the same time, Tyreek, you know, he just had that episode of Atlanta, but never been number one on a call sheet. Definitely had never been number one on a studio set. And yeah, there was, you know, 90% of directing is casting, as they say. So he already had parallels with the actual character, and I knew he had authenticity, and he was sweet and soulful. Obviously, he's like an insane-looking human being, and all those things, and actually played football, which also saved us a lot of money. The UPM like hugged me when I showed him a video of him throwing a football, and so that the dynamic of them being the center of the universe, I wanted to put Tyreek, a very grounded person, an actor, in the center of hyper personalities like Julia Fox and Marlon Wayans. And Julia's also, that choice was very meta because she's known in the zeitgeist for dating Kanye. Maybe that's like the one thing that people latch on to, and there's a lot more to her. And she's actually one of the first people that read the script and was like, fuck yeah, I get it. And so, yeah, was anyone like, we get it? No. Everyone at the studio was like, what? Like, if you looked at their headshots on the wall, it was just like, what movie is this? And I was like, exactly.
And we were talking before that one of the things that I think is really striking about the film is that we were talking about defamiliarizing. It defamiliarizes football. Like, we know football from TV and even video games and obviously other films. But beyond things like Any Given Sunday, were there influences? Were you thinking about any other films in thinking about this rollerball? Were there models where you thought, I want to take football in this direction, or I'm kind of thinking about other sports or horror films that it is making me want to be inspired by?
Yeah. And this is like what I came in and pitched to Monkey Paw. I came in and, because it's about football, but it's not about football. I came in and I said, I want to take the two leads, those two archetypes, and essentially center everything around them, and the comps being Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now, and a lot of post-Vietnam films. So if you look at their performances, that's where that trajectory is like coming from, because as I put in the film, the history of the game itself is rooted in war and teaching, boys how to take land, quite literally. So that's where all the American imperialist texture starts to infuse itself from the inception at the very beginning. And they're like, what? but they loved it. And then from there, okay, we have like our characters, and who are they navigating the world, and how are they going to operate? And then I was referencing, Black Swan and The Shining and Suspiria and a lot more psychological horror, because for me, the game itself is body horror. All that stuff happens, like limbs break. Someone died quite literally on the football field, had a heart attack, and they resuscitated him like a couple months before we went and shot this. So that all happens. We just put the lens on it. People get injected with Toradol every day, and then it's all that was all body horror, was inherent. So I wanted to lean into the psycho horror as what is it psychology of an athlete that wants to be the greatest of all time, but all in service of like sports industrial complex. So I told everybody that the horror is, for me, was what happens when the athlete becomes the commodity. So even going down the escalator at the combine, I told my department heads, like, this needs to feel like, one, the first, gate of hell, the first gate of hell, or the descent from heaven, and two, like a piece of meat going through a conveyor belt. And that's why I blocked it that way. Because it's just, he's there presentationally, and the scene ends in the elevator, and the doors closes, and then he's in getting his shit done. I was just copying what you do to prep meat.
You also have like an incredible use of medical imaging, this sort of MRI, X-ray, that's also part of that you're sort of using this contemporary imaging we use for medical procedures and to scan athletes and put it into the film. What was the decision and how much, that's sort of shocking as you get towards the end when, the skeleton underneath the football player is revealed?
Yeah, that's something that when conceiving some of these sequences and how do you show football in a way that football's not been shown, the idea being, well, I felt like a lot of people, fans that see injuries on fields, if there's no blood, you can't really relate to it, and football's all collision and everything's happening below, and the bruising, it's basically like you're getting into a car wreck every weekend and then trying to recover to get into another car wreck. And so, and obviously CTE and the invisible killer, and so I wanted to show, like, well, if we can show it, how do you show and put an audience in the experience of what it is like to be hit that hard or to feel that pain? Like, I've been concussed and I've been all the things, so I was trying to find something immersive to tell that story, but then it was, how do you infuse it and connect it to, every time he's basically getting better at football, he's becoming a worse person. So the first time he gets hit in the head, there's like a frame of it, and you probably have to go step through it, but before the hymn title card, and then there's the image starts there. So we were trying to track, the midpoint is basically when we go full skeleton football horror, and that was, for me, that's where we introduced it, because that's the point of no return for him. But yeah, that's where that's coming from.
How much did you debate over the multiple endings that you shot for the film? I'm just curious, because a lot of people don't know that there are some other endings that were shot. Then you settled on this one. I wonder if you could kind of walk us through what you wanted to say at the end and why you chose not to use those other endings.
Yeah, there's a script out there where he says yes. I have too. 8 weeks out, that was like the plan. This one ultimately was the one because it was oddly hopeful, in my opinion, where if the owners of the team could be capitalism as an allegory. They could be many things, but whatever you want to ascribe to the owners, then Marlon Wayne's character and Tyreek Withers' character are both they're both being exploited by that entity, by the occult. So it was either do you tell a story in which the horror trope would be it's going to just continue the way it is, and it felt like, for me, I wanted to show an end where the cycle just ends. Why would he go play football after that? And what are you saying if he does play football after that? And yeah, and I say that also to say that there's a room full of the future is here right now, and I hope that if anything, you figure out a better way we could all live.
I think that's one of the questions that I had for you too was, if you're an historian looking back 20 years from now and you pick up him in 2045, what do you think it's trying to tell us, or what can it tell people in the future about this exact moment? Because it's always this interesting thing lately with films like this, which are so evocative of a certain kind of a future, but are actually really so grounded in the present.
Yeah, I feel like we're all experiencing something just fundamental in terms of uncertainty, and we all experienced COVID together and a global pandemic, and I think mortality is at the top of mind, and how do we spend our time? And so many people, at least my group of friends, were like quitting jobs and left and right and like reevaluating everything. So I think there's been this pretty universal experience of, but why? And how do we spend our time? And for who? And now, I mean, the biggest wealth gap in this country's history. I mean, the world, the first trillionaire, everyone's one paycheck away from poverty or one medical incident away from losing everything. Yeah, I think that's what, if I'm just going off what was running through my mind while I was making this and the people I was making it with, those are all fears. And those are like the real fears. That's the real scare. That's the real horror. So that's why I say, in a way, it felt more hopeful when in a cult that's grooming young people and threatening to kill your family, and it felt like a reminder that this is one allegory, and to like that soundtrack and working with Denzel Curry and Bobby, like we have military drums going, like dun, 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 like that whole time. So it was also a call to action.
What's interesting is that you have a tightly controlled sense of what you want the film to be, but you were also really open to some improv. So you allow the actors and the script even to breathe a little bit. I wonder if you could talk about what that's like working with them when you have an idea, but you also want to get their possibilities.
Yeah, I love improving. Like it's, I worked on a lot of TV with comedians as well, and so I knew that I wanted to do that going in, and it really is also when you're working with Marlon Wayans, like you want to get the best out of Marlon Wayans, so that's allowing freedom and space to do it. It is definitely a balance. This whole entire time making this was one calibration, beat to beat, line to line, where there's so much on the cutting room floor that was hilarious, but we just had to lose something. But there's basically, here's every important beat, and those we would hit, and those we would get clean and make a very specific point to get them right. But the spaces in between that, I would invite fun. I mean, I like play music on set. It's not that serious. It's expensive hobbies, but still have anxiety attacks and depression. But yeah, that's just how I like to work. So.
And so, it's interesting to talk about music on set because the set and some of these things are incredible locations that you found. And I'm wondering your sense of how much a location matters. We have a lot of conversation now about using AI and not having, forget LED walls, just moving fully in AI backgrounds. How much was Albuquerque, the set you found, the kind of brutalist architecture, such a character for this film?
Yeah, there's no AI in this movie. Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Give me my water back. Feed people. Yeah, there's no AI. It's all practical, and there's some help from VFX, but there's no AI. It just so happened to be, a brutalist high school football field that existed in Albuquerque. Don't know why. I was like, what the hell? Because we wrote that, and then it appeared, and his compound that's real. It's like a space station port for like Virgin Atlantic in New Mexico, where millionaires fly out for 5 minutes into the stratosphere and land back down. Also felt thematically on point. But we were talking about, to make it homey, I put Amazon boxes out front. And yeah, so even like the hallway, he enters the house for the first time and like goes down that hallway with all the art. That's actually just the hallway of the high school football field. Yeah, we didn't have the money, so less is more. So yeah.
What's next? What are you working on now? What are you hoping to work on?
Good question. I'm actually writing a TV show, a pilot and a feature. I guess no, I mean, yeah, how much can I say? One, the feature's in, it's a revenge Western, and the TV show is anachronistic take on Sword and Stone that I have. But that's all I can really say about that.
Well, last question I'll give you before I turn it over to the audience. Is this for the future Justin Tipping's out there in the audience? What do you say about this business and how to become a director? How do you make this dream happen?
Yeah. Damn, that's a big question, because I know everyone wants to know it. I know I want to know it. I didn't know anyone in the industry. I didn't have any connections. I didn't know like do it till I left UCSB. So I would say, you just can't give up. Most people just stop because of the rejection. And I feel like after I went to LA, I definitely had this conversation and deal with myself where I had to honestly say, like, am I okay being broke for the rest of my life and still trying to make films? And the answer was yes, I was okay with that. And I was for my entire 20s, but I was okay with that. And I think that worked for me in terms of accepting the fact that I was going to have to go shoot my friend's wedding video and edit whatever thing for friends to make enough money to pay rent. And then, when film school, you don't need AFI, you don't need film school to become a director. It worked out for me, but you don't need it. Like, if I didn't get in, I would just make another short film until I made another short film, until I made another short film that actually was good. I made 10 terrible shorts until I made the one coming out of AFI that kind of launched my career. But there's so much to talk about in terms of advice on how to make it as a director. I will say this: have a short and have a feature script ready to go in the same tone, because it doesn't matter if you have a great short. Everyone's going to say, what's next? And you have to have something to say, this is what I'm going to do. I would say that. And yeah, Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason, honestly. Sometimes it's the myth of meritocracy. I actually came from sports too, and I think what was a really crazy thing to experience is in sports, it's at least somewhat like you do X, Y, Z, and you work hard, this pays off. In film, that is not the case. Probably most of the real world is not the case. And sometimes it's just about waiting, really. And I mean, how many filmmakers took off after they were 40? I'm still kind of I'm still actually rare. It's rare that I was doing television in my 30s the way I was. It was, people were definitely looking at me on set like, who the hell? I also look younger than I am. I swear I'm 40, but Filipinos. What were we talking about?
Well, I was asking you what's next, and then how to become you. But speaking of what's next, I think we're gonna go to some audience questions.
Hi, I wanted to specifically ask about the research or kind of the thought process that went into understanding football for this film, and not just like the physicality, like you said, of throwing a football, but that, you know, camaraderie or maybe lack thereof. I know you mentioned that you came from sports, but what other influences or what other research came into understanding that for the film?
Yeah, great question. I did a lot of reading. There's a book called The Black Quarterback. I did a lot of research into the history of the game, and I watched pretty much every ESPN 30 for 30 doc there was, and every HBO, and you know, and every football film that I could, to just know what had been done and what worked and what didn't work. And I talked to some professional football players, and just getting their insight. The title cards are all the people I talked to. What were the best attributes for a quarterback? That's where those came from, and that's why they're there. They're a combination of motivational sports posters and scripture. But yeah, you know, one athlete I talked to, yes, talking about knowing, like, recovering from an injury and knowing like they weren't ready to play in the NFL, and it's just ingrained in you that you do it. It doesn't matter, you're a soldier, and one night, yeah, the coach said, "How's your shot?" And he was like, everything in my body told me no, like terrified, but he just said yes. And that 2 quarters into the game tore like his pec off his bone and like never played again. But yeah, so it was like the psychology of that and the humanity of that. And I think for Marlon, a lot of our conversation was about, that's the thing, if in specificity there is universality, and then once you start realizing like, oh, this is something that you're hitting something at its core, and that's kind of what I was looking for in those conversations.
I watched this like opening day back home in San Francisco with all my friends.
Shout out.
And I remember in contrast to them, I really enjoyed the kind of tonal shift from, I love that you said Nike ad, because that's what I thought too, in the beginning when they're training in the football field. And then by the end is kind of like campy and celebratory in this super over-the-top way. So I was just kind of wondering how intentional that was, or what the thought process was behind that tonal shift. And follow-up question, in a way, I thought the commentary, or at least the symbols, were really interesting throughout, with the allusions to like gladiatorial combat and religious sacrifice. But I just if you could expand on why you chose to film this final scene of like redemption through violence, I think that would be interesting, because the rest of the movie seems to kind of criticize this macho desire to be the best through violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first part was the tonal shifts were very self-aware, intentionally camp, and there's like one too many Tim Heidecker dick jokes. It's like too funny, and then like too much Julia is like too camp, and then too much there was still a balance to be struck, and part of it is it's men in tights running around bloody on like a football field and chopping off heads. It's like, I don't know how serious this should be. Like I was referencing Jodorowsky's, Holy Mountain and all of his work, because at the end of the day, this is still commentary or political satire, because really this is just holding up a mirror to American values. And football is the most fundamental American thing you have, God, family, football. And so that's where I was going, and it's, my point of view, and it's definitely a huge swing, which obviously you hate it or you love it, but me as an artist, apathy is the worst thing. So I would rather it be remembered and talked about, and I was willing to take that risk in terms of like the creative swing. The violence is more, I would say, Kwame said, you can be at peace and be enslaved. And what does true liberation look like? So I would ask you, the audience, name one right you have that wasn't achieved through violence. Anybody? Every right we have has been through violence. So if this is about, American imperialism or colonialism, or like really, if we're going really deep cut cultural theory, my grandmother died with American shrapnel in her back. There's, generations of Filipinos in my family that were freedom fighters, and fought in the Bay for our labor rights, Larry Itliong and the Delano Grape strikes. So I guess that's my point of view. And grappling with it. Has he lost some of his soul? Absolutely. I'm not arguing that it's justified. But I do know there's something in the zeitgeist in society that's happening that people want answers to. Like, why are people cheering on Luigi? I'm not here, I don't have the answers, but as an artist, I do feel like I'm just holding up, as a filmmaker, I think you're holding up a two-way mirror. You're looking at yourself, but you're also just showing it. So, also, I had to shoot that ending. At the end of the day, this is still a business, and I'm hired to do my job, and between audiences, test screenings, all things, and my conversations with the studios and a Monkey Paw, Jordan, everyone agreed that this was the best thing for the story.
Hello. I'm Ryan.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, we graduated in the same year.
Yeah.
And it makes me super happy that someone from our class made it, that you made it. And I like that you talked about sacrifice and struggle. And you didn't know you would be a director at the time you were here. And you struggled and you had to make 10 short films before you made the short film that made it. At what point, how did you break out of that struggle? And at what point did you feel like you got the flow and the confidence to actually be that director you're meant to be?
You know, I think that there's still a bit of like imposter syndrome, like every time out the gate. But I think what I started getting better at was just processing that quicker. So instead of being down for 6 months, then it was 2 months, then it was 2 weeks, it was 2 days, it was 2 hours, to be like, fuck, I fucked that up. I definitely didn't get that shot, and we definitely didn't make that day. But letting that go quicker, like that's a muscle, I think. And I think it's all ultimately boils down to like, yeah, just, it's not even confidence, just the courage to be vulnerable, I think. Yeah. Because you're going to get, I mean, like the critics, oh my God. No one saw that coming. I don't think the Comcast puts the global marketing machine behind the movie if they don't already know that it's going to be praised. But then I woke up the day after the premiere to Justin Tipping sucks, and he should go fuck himself. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, it was like a rough month after this movie came out. But you have to be willing to do that. At AFI, you actually like train for it. You make shorts that no one else is going to see, and everyone who makes the short sits in front of the class after it's screened, and everyone talks about what they hated about the movie. The filmmakers can't say anything. It's called narrative workshop. But what it teaches is it doesn't matter that like whatever went wrong on set. It doesn't matter that you didn't have money for that. It's just what's on screen and how's an audience going to react. And that's why I think it's how much are you willing to keep trying? Because, you know, it's nearly impossible to make a film. It's impossible to make a good film. It's like a miracle to make a great one. And it's really just if you give up, you give up. And who said it, Seth? What's like Rogan? What do you say?
Yeah, no one who quits ever makes it.
Yeah, it's like most of the people, I went to school with that aren't working. It's kind of like just you hit a point where you're like, is it worth it? But I will say this, some advice I got from a mentor of mine at AFI too was, it's like, well, what should I do to be, he won an Academy Award. And he was like a couple divorces and then some nights in jail. And he's saying, like, if you want to be a screenwriter or filmmaker, go be a janitor, go whatever, but you have to live life. And if you just get swept up in a 9 to 5 of something that's not allowing you time to pursue creative ideas and fail, like, oh, so this is full circle. When I graduated here, I remember a speaker saying you need to go fail spectacularly. I just still remember that. But that's kind of what short films are for, I think. You have to like really fail to figure it out.
Hello. As a screenwriter and director for this film, would you say, do you see yourself in any of the characters? And as kind of like a follow-up, which character did you kind of enjoy writing the most, or did you find any character like the most fun to write in particular?
Yeah, there are pieces of me in both, probably Marlon's character and Tyreek's character. Is because in a way, everyone, even working on the film, like it's essentially about the film industry too. In the sense that this lifestyle, even like it becomes all consuming and solipsistic, and like how many birthdays you miss, how many funerals, how many weddings, because you just had to do the thing, because we live in an exhaustion economy, and you know, there's Beyonce has 24 hours in a day, so like grind. But is that true? I don't think so. I don't think you have to be an asshole to be great either. And so basically both, a little bit of both. I am kind of crazy. And who was the most fun to write? Jim Jeffries' character, Marco, probably. There's a lot of stuff that we just had to lift or left even in development, but he was fun because you just try to get into a place that was the whole movie is kind of getting into a place where if we could teach a language quickly that this is anything goes, he could say whatever he wants. It doesn't matter. So that was fun.
Please join me in a round of applause and thanking Justin for being here.